All right. Hello, Sally, and we are live. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everyone, but as we say, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, hello everyone. I am super excited to be here. My name, and starting this big payoff webinar with a bang. I'm so excited that you guys are all here today. My name is Autumn Bernier, and I am the founder and CEO at Sallie Krawcheck, and we are a digital community for women learning to change their careers with tech skills. And I'm here with the wonderful and amazing LFS CEO, Sallie Krawcheck, the woman once called the last honest analyst on Wall Street. So Sally, I'm going to show you and you can wave to everybody. Hello, everyone. And I think that you're going to find that Sally very much lives up to that moniker. She's always a pleasure to listen to in my experience. So I want to welcome all of you to the Big Payoff Summit, where we'll dive into all the benefits of a career in tech, from money to more time with your family to working from home or being your own boss. There are so many different options. This is our first webinar in the summit, and over the next 3 days, I'll be talking to women about navigating these benefits, and they'll share their own stories, advice, tips, and tricks for getting a career that serves you. So, you may be here for a variety of different reasons. Maybe you're here because you're ready to strike out on your own as a developer, but aren't sure where to start, or how to negotiate with new clients. Or maybe you're looking for more fulfillment from your job instead of just punching a clock. That's not any fun for anyone. Or maybe you're ready to start making more money and figuring out what to do with it. I think Sally can really help us there. So if you fit into any of these categories, you are in the right place. We're going to give you lots and lots of information. So we're here to specifically to talk about money, because as you probably know by now, a career in tech usually means making more of it. But before we dive into that, I've got a little bit of quick housekeeping. So first of all, if you miss any of this week's live webinars, do not worry. We're going to be sending you links to all of the replays, and you will have access to them in perpetuity. So you can always watch them, rewatch them, all of those things. In addition, as part of the summit, we're giving away 6 all-access blueprints. Each of them is worth $14.99, so that's almost $1,500. And we're going to be giving away one during each webinar, including one this morning. So I wanted to congratulate our very first winner, named Kendall, and I'm totally going to butcher your last name. It is Heichten. I'm not sure if I got that right, but she won our very first giveaway this morning, and I'm so excited to welcome Kendall. And Kendall, a member of our team, will be in touch with you shortly. So I have 5 more blueprints to give away, and all you need to do to enter is to share your favorite takeaways and quotations from the webinars and use the hashtag #BigPayoff. And I think I actually have a slide to help explain how to do this, which I would definitely need. So if you want to win or enter to win an all-access blueprint, go ahead and tweet all those quotables, and I think if you're going to get a lot of quotables from Sally. So a lot of fodder to enter this giveaway, but also honestly, we just want to keep this conversation going and active on Twitter and Facebook and any social media platform that works for you. Also, over the course of the webinar, we're going to be taking questions and comments. So below this video, you will find a Facebook comment section. Please go ahead and pop your questions and comments in there. If you have anything to ask Sally, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get one-on-one advice from one of the great women of finance. So please definitely take advantage. Okay. So I think that is all of the major housekeeping that we need to get into before we get started. And I'm now just super excited to introduce Sally. So Sally calls herself a financial feminist, and she is the founder and CEO of a digital platform for women for investing called Ellevest. very nice little play on words there. Sallie is committed to supporting women both professionally and financially. She's also the chair of the Elevate Network, the Global Professional Women's Network, and of the PAC's Elevate Global Women's Index Fund, which she can talk to you a little bit more about. But that basically invests in top-rated companies in the world for advancing women. In short, Sallie is sort of hitting it across many, many different channels. Her career in finance is unbelievably impressive. She was the former CEO of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. She was also the former CEO of Smith Barney and of Sanford Bernstein. So this lady has got some serious chops. I met Sallie right when I was starting to get Skill Crush off the ground. And it was one of those like hilarious and revelatory moments for me, because here I was, this like 20-something, trying to figure out what the heck I was doing with my life. And I got to meet Sallie, and in this strange vortex that is tech and entrepreneurship, we actually had something in common, which is that we were both looking to get digital businesses off the ground. And I've always found Sallie to be amazingly warm and open and fantastic to talk to. So I am just going to let her take it away and introduce yourself, Sallie. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to nowadays, and we'll get going.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and let the record reflect that I'm a huge Ada fan. I have been since the first time we met. And Ada, I don't know if you remember where it was, but it was in that sort of below-ish, halfway below ground Starbucks downtown. I think you had come in from Brooklyn. I was coming from Midtown, and somehow we met in this half-submerged Starbucks in the middle of, nowhere. At the time, but and I've really enjoyed watching you and watching your business and watching your mission really sharpen and grow over the past handful of years. I've had this heck of a journey myself. You'd think sort of at my age I'd be baked, and this is what I do what I do, this is what I do. But I had a revelation a handful of years ago, a series of revelations actually, and they all seem to surround women and money. And of course I was a feminist. But I wasn't a feminist, and, had a series of revelations, the first one of which is that, in my old jobs, having seen the financial crisis up front, close and too scary, and we forget how scary it was, that, what I saw the cause of it as being groupthink. What breaks groupthink? Diversity. What does research tell us? The number one thing you would do if you could do only one thing to make a business better, the research tells us, is you put a woman on the team. And as I began to think about how to prevent the next financial crisis, et cetera, I really thought about diversity. So that sort of led to buying the old 85 Broads, Elevate Network, the PAC's Elevate Fund, which invests in the top-rated companies for advancing women, which, dang it, 3 years in is outperforming. The second big revelation, sort of being in these businesses, is, dang it, women have got money. We have more money than we've had in our history, but we don't have as much money as the guys do. And we will not be equal with men until we are financially equal with men. I think we all know that. We all know a woman, maybe that woman is ourselves, but we all know a woman who's stuck in a job she doesn't like because she doesn't feel like she can afford to quit. She's stuck in a personal relationship that no longer works for her because she doesn't feel like she can afford to quit. Or she can't live her dream because she can't afford to do it. And everybody is talking about the gender pay gap, which is super important, but there's another gender gap out there, the gender investing gap, which, as I calculate it, can cost the women on this webinar hundreds of thousands, for the women on this webinar, millions of dollars over the course of their lives. Nobody's talking about it. We women tend to blame ourselves for it, and closing that gender investing gap can change our lives, literally change our lives. So I decided to take everything I had learned on Wall Street, bring in some folks who knew how to start businesses, bring in the smartest chief investment officer, the most experienced I could find, and try to recreate this thing top to bottom with Ellevest. By the way, if you had told me 3 years ago, Ada, maybe you did, oh, you should start an investing platform for women, I would have said, Ada, you are so sexist, I can't stand it. What a stupid idea. You don't think we can handle the big man numbers? And you know what? This much later, it really is.
I invest $10. That's what you do, right? No.
There we go. But it's clear that Wall Street investing has really been by men for men, and hasn't done a great job of talking to us women. So that's my life's work, is to work to close this gender investing gap.
So, I mean, okay, there's so much there.
So much. So much there.
I think this will be exactly what we talk about probably for the next hour. But I guess I want to touch really quickly on something that you said right at the outset, before we dive really deep into the nitty-gritty of women and money and all this stuff that we're talking about, which is, you know, a lot of our students come to us and are really concerned about their age and feeling like, how can I start over at this advanced age of, you know, 25 or 35 or something? But actually, this is something that's really interesting. I know, exactly. That's what I was going to say. This is something that's really interesting about you. And I feel like also a lot of people, you know, a lot of people who are in this position are like, oh, I haven't necessarily accomplished a lot. But I don't know, you're such a good example of somebody who was, I mean, you know, killing it by all estimations and really made a very dramatic.
Oh, yes. But back up. For those who are on this, who are in their 20s and are thinking, you know, I got to quickly figure out what I'm doing, or my life is passing me by. My 20s were a complete and total waste, I mean, I went into investment banking, which I hated. I got married. Oh gosh, I got married way too early. I went to business school to get out of it. I got into media, but I couldn't get a job in media. I had to go back into investment banking. My husband had an affair with a friend of mine, so we broke up. I went into a job I hated, vomited my entire first day, ended up meeting someone else, got married, pregnant, quit job, and I'm telling you, at the age of 29 years and 11 months, I'm standing in my kitchen thinking I'm a complete washout. My life is over because I'm almost 30. And I spent all this money on business school. I had a scholarship to college. I've thrown it away. I'm so embarrassed. It's over. And then all of a sudden, I had this kaboom moment, as I like to say, as so many young women do at that age, that I wanted to be a sell-side equity research analyst.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we all had that moment.
Everybody. But boom, the whole thing clicked on it. And do you know, about 3 months later, I was a sell-side equity research analyst. Do you know that 7 years later, I was running Smith Barney? So I went from associate, I'd taken a pay cut, and I was running friggin' Smith Barney, which had 35,000 people. Why? Because I'd actually spent my 20s sort of subconsciously learning what I was good at, figuring out what I wanted to do. And so when it finally hit me, I was successful really quickly as a sell-side analyst, and then director of research, and then CEO. And there were some bets I took along the way, some risks I took that paid off. If they hadn't, I would have been, wouldn't have been a great story. But it's not too late. And then at the age of 40 something, I won't say exactly how much, after getting reorged out of running Merrill, I thought I had the opportunity to go back and run a big complex company again. And I thought, I've done that. I've been there. Why would I want to do that? Though having the warm chocolate chip cookies delivered every day at 3 p.m. was unbelievable.
I'll send you warm chocolate chip cookies every day if that's what you need.
Really? I don't feel like you're going to. But the idea of doing something else, and more importantly, having an impact and making a difference. The great thing is it no longer has to be at a big company. That you can actually probably have more of an impact at a startup because you move faster, and with the power of technology and social media, et cetera, you can build something that can catch fire.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love what you're saying, which is this idea of like, once you hit the right stride, it can actually happen really fast.
Really fast, right. Which is,
I think, something that, I think a lot of us have experienced it, but I think when you're on the other side of that, it's hard to believe.
That's right. And by the way, it took a long time to be an overnight success.
Yeah.
And so, all my 20s, I just remember crying, going on vacation at one point and just crying because I thought I'd throw my life away, which is of course ridiculous, but seemed really, really to be the case at the time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's another really good point that we often try to talk to people about is like the stuff that you've been doing that feels like a waste of your time. It has value, and you are learning things and learning about yourself and skills and getting exposure and stuff that you can't necessarily understand the value of it at the time.
Well, and I think the other thing too is their hero stories all seem to be in a straight line. And that, there is one way to be successful. And particularly in this latest phase of my career, you get a ton of no's. I mean, it is shocking how many no's one gets. But that every day is a new opportunity, and every day you don't have to get, if you go for high impact things, getting a big investor in, starting a company, etc. You don't have to be successful very often in order for it to be amazing. You just need to keep going at it a lot.
I love to quote Ross from Friends when talking about marriage. He said, it only has to work once.
Okay.
All right. So now to switch to a slightly more serious topic. We, as women, constantly hear about how much less money we make. Right. Mm-hmm. And we make less in all different avenues and different, comparable. It's basically, it seems to be bad news no matter where we turn. So can you talk to me a little bit about this? And, what are some things that, you're doing or that you see people doing or that you think we should be doing to help address this issue?
Right. Well, so it's a couple things. One thing we can do, there's lots of literature out there on how to ask for the raise and how to close the money gap. And I would say the good news is today, there are more sources of information. When I was going to ask for a raise when I was younger, I'm just going to go ask for 10 because I don't even know. I mean, we couldn't talk about it. It was taboo and there were no sources. And today, depending on what field you're in, you can go to Get Raised, payscale.com, you can go to Hired, you can go to Comparably. There are different sources where if it won't give you an exact number, at least you can triangulate it. The other advice that I give is to make it about the numbers, not does my boss think I did a good job? But instead, earlier in the year to have the conversation about what is success. Success is X new client. Success is Z clean audit. Success is this kind of satisfaction score, this kind of net promoter score. I was really fortunate because when I was a research analyst, it was clear what success was. Were my recommendations working or not working? Was I getting client votes or not getting them? It wasn't a lot about, hey, Sallie, some people think you're a little abrasive or a little aggressive or too girly. It was, here are the results up against the guys. And I loved that clarity. That being said, I think there's no doubt that in some companies and some industries, that middle management is where diversity goes to die. And that the chances of, in a traditional job, getting through an entire career and not having a boss who is not, who's not gender biased. I've got a double negative there. But anyway, the chances are you're going to have a boss who's gender biased and who's going to clog you. And that's sort of one of the reasons that so many women in their 30s drop out of the workforce. So there's another great option today that simply wasn't available in my day, which is start your own business. And I was recently writing, I sort of like this idea, which is if you start your own business, the one who decides whether you're successful or not is the market and the customers and the clients, not some guy named Steve. Mm-hmm. And so that ability to start businesses and sort of find our own way is very different and really quite meaningful for all of us these days.
Right. And I think, starting your own business can sound really scary. And, you have to go from 0 to 20 employees. But for a lot of people, it starts as a solopreneur, kind of freelancing full time.
For sure. And that is another option too. Freelancing full time, consulting full time. And by the way, you don't have to, in some jobs, you don't have to immediately go the whole way. You can do if you're in certain industries, you can do your job. You can do a little bit of freelancing, see what you think of it. Test the waters a little bit. If you're thinking about starting a business and you don't know, see if you can get on an advisory board, spend time with entrepreneurs. You can try this stuff out and test it. But what I fret about is that the gender pay gap has been so stubborn, that there is something underlying it, that keeps us from saying, it's not just as simple as let me ask for the raise and I'll get it. There really are these gender biases that tend to underpin it.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I think about a lot because there's so much advice around negotiating. And I think as a business owner, what I think a lot about is pay parity, right? I think that's really important, that people who are doing equal work are getting equal pay, which is part of what you're talking about, the gender disparity. But I think sometimes it feels like when we focus so much attention on negotiating and ability to negotiate, you end up kind of rewarding people who are good at negotiating, which isn't always the best skill. So I'm curious, like, what your take on that. Like, for me, like, this is where I feel like I end up with these radical thoughts. Like, I want my employees to collectively bargain, you know, because I'm like, that actually feels, as an employer, like the more fair way to do it.
Well, and here's the issue. You know, what's laws are starting to pass in certain areas of the country in which you're not allowed to ask what somebody made before. And I have to tell you, Ada, it's not a solution I ever would have thought of. Or when I first heard it, did I even think it was a very good idea? But I think it is. And I'll tell you why. We, you know, not to tell a tale out of school, but we recently had someone that we were making an offer to. My partner, my co-founder, was in charge of the negotiation. And as it turned out, this individual is underpaid. And it's an area in which we know the compensation levels very well. And she just had a couple of bad breaks. She had some stuff going on with her family. And so she couldn't, you know, really bring it all to work. She had a bad boss. I sort of know of, you know, bad boss. And so here she was coming to us making 20, 30% below what she should make and what we were prepared to pay for the job. So what do? You know, if you're a startup and every dollar counts, and you know this, right? We've got this many months of runway and you have somebody who comes here and is willing
to accept less than,
and willing to take less, you know, do you pay them less? And the answer is we did not. The answer is that we said, look, you know, even though I would have done it in my prior life without ever thinking 99 times out of 100, you know, as I become more aware of it, nope, this is what the job pays, and simply because, you know, this person's qualified for the job, and that's what we're going to pay her, as opposed to, well, we've saved an extra X thousand bucks, you know, let's book it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really big topic, and I know for us, like, we've created salary tiers, and it's funny because it feels like such a weird corporate thing to do that I would never, like, you know, but it solves this problem, because it's like, you know, just because someone would is willing to accept $30,000 less or something, it doesn't mean it's okay.
And we've done the same, and we've made it completely transparent. This is what it is, and this is where you are, and this is, you know, if you want to go any higher, you're going to need to get promoted, and this is what you need to do to get promoted. I agree with you. It feels corporate, and so therefore it breaks me out in hives, but we've come to the same solution. Yeah.
Okay. Since this isn't, Sallie, not a talk business tactics, as much as I would love to do that with you, I would actually love to talk about off-ramping and on-ramping, because I know this is actually something you have an experience with, and it's something you talk about a lot. Sort of, what is the opportunity cost of taking a couple of years off, and how do you sort of come back on, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I'm going to brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. So if I were to say to you, hey, you want to take a 2-year career break, not unusual, you know, either you had a kid or you just need a breather, or you want to travel around the world, you need a 2-year career break. You make $85,000 a year. I would say to you, how much will that career break cost? Now, I'm not going to make you do math in your head, Ada, but you would probably come back and say, I got it, it's $170,000. I took the 85 to $170K. And I would say, no, it will cost you over the course of your life, on average, $1.7 million, or 10 times what you think. What? You might say.
So 10 times the amount of salary you literally lose in the time that you're off.
The reason is because the research we've done, and broader research is out there, it's not just ours, but academic research, shows that the longer, when you leave a job, you tend to come back at a lower pay. And the longer you're away, the lower, the bigger the hit you take. And in fact, I saw that. We talked about my career break at the end of my 20s. When I shifted, you know, from one job to another, I took a 50% pay cut, 50%, and was happy to do it, by the way, and it worked out just fine. So here's what happens is you've got a pay cut, and then you tend to get that raise off of the lower level through the course of your career. You're also, in that year, not 2 years, not investing in your 401k or contributing to Social Security, and so there's a compounding effect from that. So all sort of bad news. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't take a career break. It just means you shouldn't take a career break without recognizing how much it can cost you. And so what are the solutions to it? A solution is to negotiate before you go. It's hard to negotiate a 2-year career break, but maybe it's I need a 6-month sabbatical. Or, I'm going out on a maternity leave and I'm going to take all my maternity time and I'm going to take my vacation time and, like a break here and come back to the same type of job. Or be very clear if you're taking one, what the cost is and what you hope to accomplish during one of them.
So say that you've already done this. You've made the choice. You stayed a couple of years out of the workforce. I've now realized that I need to start making income again. I'm trying to figure out what to do. Mm-hmm. How do I get back into it? I mean,
you go to the Skill Crush classes. And I'm actually not kidding. I'm actually not kidding.
I believe you.
What I tell women is the kiss of death can be, and it's not too late, but the kiss of death can be stepping out, fully out. And that you think about it, let's put tech aside for a second. I'll just use marketing as an example. Imagine if you were in a senior marketing role 5 years ago and you stepped out. So you left a world that was all about brand building, and you're coming back into a world that's about brand building and multi-touch attribution analysis. That's a enormous change over what doesn't seem like an extraordinarily long period of time. So what I tell everybody is either take a class, be with you on the tech classes, go to General Assembly for marketing classes, or, volunteer. Some nonprofit who can use your skill set so that you kind of keep your capabilities up and going, or do a little bit of consulting, or do part-time, but something to keep your toe in the water. Because I got to tell you, there is nothing more heartbreaking than what I've seen recently, as I've reached an age in which my kids are going to college, my friends' kids are going to college, and my friends are then coming to me and saying, look, I've been out of the workforce for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. How do I get back in? And you're just like, you don't want to say you can't, but it's a much harder, it then becomes finding that, shiny unicorn of a job that, is available for somebody who's been out for that long. And that's a very, very hard thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I think it's sort of this interesting question of like, how many years off at which point you are just starting a new career. You know, you just have to approach it as I'm at ground zero and I'm going to start. And you know what I mean? Like, I would imagine someone coming back after 15 years, you're not picking up it's just, everything has changed.
No. Look, I think the answer, whatever the answer is, it's a shorter period of time than it used to be, right? Just because the business world is moving so quickly and things are changing so fast that, if before you could say, look, I'm stepping out for 5 years and I'll be a little rusty when I come back. If it's no longer that number, whether it's 2 years, I don't know. But of course the market is telling you, because the decline in pay that you take, that your skills have deteriorated over that period.
Right. Hopefully, I hope that the sort of growth of online education and more accessible education can help.
Yeah, me too.
Combat and counterweight what we're talking about.
The combination of the two things, right, Ada? It's not just the online education, it's then the opportunity to start your own thing as well. The combination of those two will, I hope, bring mostly, of course it's going to be mostly women, back in a way that can make sense for them. Because I think the other thing, and which we should just acknowledge, is I don't think we saw what was her name? Julia Margulies on The Good Wife, right? She was willing to come back in at a certain age and work like a dog. There are people who say, hey, I'm 47 years old. I'm really not interested in doing the all weekend, all night, sort of thing. And so I'm hopeful that the training plus the greater ability to start your own thing can maybe unleash what's pretty massive amount of economic power, which are the previously work in the home moms.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, we're listening to our president talk about how to stimulate the economy. And I'm like, the untapped working potential that's out there.
Yeah, the president, huh?
Is very, well, yeah, we won't talk about him. But What I wanted to talk about,
I'm sure he's all over it. I'm sure he's all over it.
Is so one of the things that's been a big education for me as I've started my business is sort of, and started to make a little bit of money and all of those things, is sort of recognizing that it's not just about making money, right? It's not just, I mean, obviously it's just great to maximize your income, but then so much of your long-term financial health is actually really not about how much money you make, but how you are the steward of that money.
Yes.
And that, I mean, that talk about something I had no idea about. So I'm going to throw out a big word, investing, which I know is the word that you talk about.
It's a small word.
It's a, I don't know how many letter word, but yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm starting to make some money and starting to think about, okay, how do I steward this money? How am I the manager of this money and make it work for me? Where do I even start?
Yes. Okay. So we all tend to make a pretty significant mistake, which I made when I was younger, as we begin to make money. And the mistake that we tend to make is, oh my gosh, look, I'm bringing home X amount of money. Now I will figure out how to spend X amount of money. And I can have an apartment that's like this, and I can have a car that's like that, and oh, there goes my money. And if you think of all that money as being available to you, you will spend every last penny of it. An alternative way, which will not only be good for you today, but very good for future you, and which research has shown will help you better navigate the ups and downs in the economy and business and life, etc., is to take your take-home pay and divide it into 3 separate parts.
All right, I'm taking notes.
Okay,
everyone,
so
get out your
part number 1 is 50% of your take-home pay, and that is for your needs. That's for your rent, that's for the insurance, that's for your food. I'm not talking about caviar, I'm not talking about foie gras, it's for your basic
green juices. Okay, no.
Right, that's right. You can have the latte, that's fine, but just those needs need to fit into 50%. 30% is for fun. Go have a blast, right? That, going out with your friends, vacations, etc., go to town. 20%, and this is the percent women we always have trouble finding, is for future you. Out of that should come your retirement contributions, your 401k contributions, your savings for your emergency fund, and your investments. And you should, people will say, but I don't have the 20%. Yeah, you do have the 20%. You just need to live in a more modest apartment, don't have as great a car, don't go out as much, etc. Because everybody can do 50, 20, 30. If you really feel like, it's just going to be such a hardship for me to get from here to there, and you can't do 20% for future you, then do 1%. And then a couple weeks later, do 2%. And then a few weeks later, do 3%, 4%, etc., so that you work it up. And that amount, in the order it should go in of that 20% is, first of all, before you pass go, before you collect $200, you need to get your high interest rate debt paid off. Your credit card debt, student loan debt that's above 8, 9% in terms of rates, auto debt, whatever those things are that are high interest rate. The next thing you need to do is to build an emergency fund. So that's 2 to 3 months of take-home pay that's there in case of, you're going to guess it, an emergency. Mm-hmm. You need to be contributing to your 401k. Because that's tax-deferred savings for you, particularly if your employer has got a match. That's free money, and anytime they're giving out free money, you should be sure to take it.
What if you have credit card debt?
You got to pay that off. I think you pay that
free
off.
Money.
I think you got to, I can do the little calculation where the free money is worth more than paying off the credit card debt, because it really depends on what the rate on the credit card debt is. If you've got 10%, okay, fine, take the free money. But there's some credit card debt that's 20, 30%.
Yeah.
Which is just sort of highway robbery. So you can take a look at it, but the rule of thumb really is get the debt paid off first, let yourself sleep at night. There was some really bad advice particularly for women that was out there for a while, which is, no, build your emergency fund before you pay off your credit card debt. And that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because money's fungible, right? So, pay this off because it's high interest rate. If you have an emergency before, you build up your emergency fund, run up your credit cards. You know, come on, money's fungible. So credit card debt, emergency fund, 401k, and then investing. That's the order.
Okay. What about Roth IRA or like IRAs? Where do they fit into?
Yeah, so that comes into in terms of your retirement savings. But sometimes you want things before that. And that's okay. That's okay, particularly as you're younger and so your investments are compounding over time. All your investments don't have to be just for retirement. You know, we at Ellevest, what if you want to start a business before then? What if you want to have a kid before then? What if you want to buy a house? And so, you know, I wouldn't recommend, the more you can put towards retirement, the better, but you got to live your life in the meantime. And so if you're putting 10% towards that, you know, and then you put another 10% towards the things you want in the interim, investing for the longer term. Again, money is fungible. That money may be available later also for retirement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think, you know, to your point of saying, you know, live in a smaller apartment, but at the end of the day, and I know this is something that you guys do really well at Ellevest, and I'd love, you know, for you to talk a little bit about that, but like, you're really just talking about taking that 20% for future you, but then that will become the 50% that pays for the nicer place that you want to live in, and the 30% for the fun. And
well, so here's the challenge. Is that we as women, for whatever reason, there's something in, you know, we want to like, oh, don't say women are different from men. The truth is the research indicates that there are some differences. Whatever drives them, there on average are some differences. And we women tend to be more risk aware. I don't like the word risk averse, but risk aware. And so we tend to remember the bad times more than the good times. We tend to remember the crash of 07 and 08. I mean, for me, God knows it feels like it happened yesterday. We tend to remember that more than the market. Actually, on average, the stock market increases historically anywhere from 9 to 11%, depending on the period of time you look at. But we remember those downturns. And so we tend to, it feels better for us, safer for us to put money in the bank. Earning about nothing right now. The problem,
and by money in the bank, you mean put it into a savings account.
Yep.
Okay.
And the problem with that is you're earning close to nothing these days. So it feels safe, but guess what? You're losing out to inflation every day. You're actually losing money. Whereas investing in the markets, and I'm talking a low-cost diversified investment portfolio, historically has, you know, been a fruitful exercise. No guarantees for the future, but historically, you know, doing that at the kind of levels we're talking about has added hundreds of thousands or millions to a woman's net worth. Now, let me put this in some numbers that are always a little more stunning to me. If you are putting aside 20% of your take-home pay and you're putting it into the bank and you're earning close to nothing, instead of putting it in a diversified investment portfolio, and why don't you? Because you're worried that the market is too high, or you feel like you have to do a lot of work, and I got to buy the book, and I got to find the right person, and you wait 10 years to invest, which is not too far off what happens, right? You wait 10 years to invest. Do you want to guess how much money on average you have historically lost a day by waiting? $100. $100, right?
$100?
$100.
Okay.
Not kidding. Now, not, of course, in the first days, but the power of compounding is so great, you know, that you earn a return on your money, and then compounding, you earn a return on the money plus the return, and then you earn a return on the money plus the return plus the return, and a return on the money plus the return. Albert Einstein has called compounding one of the 8 great wonders of the world.
Sorry, what is the original amount that you started with?
Well, whatever. You're putting aside that 20% of your 85K, your pay.
And in 10 years, you've only missed out on $100?
No, it's $100 a day.
Oh, $100 a day.
A day. No, $100
$100 doesn't sound like that much. Okay.
$100. Have one less dinner out.
Oh my God.
A day. Look, you know what I like to say is if I left here today and $100 fell out of my purse, like how many days would it take me to fix it? You know, not many. Certainly not till the weekend. So I don't think we recognize this drive that we have for I want to be safe. The cost of it, you know, to the upside for us is really can be really meaningful.
I think this is really interesting because it's like, I feel like so often we're stuck in this position of like, it's so stressful to start an emergency savings account, and that just feels like such an insurmountable, like, because you're saying like, oh, it's hard to invest your money because I have to buy the book and learn the things, which 100% is a problem. But it's like you're kind of stuck in this place of like, I can't even get the emergency savings account, much less. But like the opportunity cost, yeah, it's unbelievable.
One day at a time. You know, look, the important thing is that you make it a habit. And so you have that percent of your paycheck that is just set aside for this, and it builds the emergency fund, and then it invests. And the great thing about it, and actually at Ellevest, I'm really happy to tell you, that's the way we invest, and that more than 70% of our clients, and we're still very new, but more than 70% of our clients invest regularly out of every paycheck. The great thing, not only then you're like, you forget it, right? You're not even thinking about it. But the other great thing about it is that it can take away that worry about the market crash. Because what I hear again and again is, well, what if I invest and the market crashes the next day? And I'm like, golly Moses, you know, then you should be like a professional investor. If you're that good.
You can predict it. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm not that good, and like nobody's that good. And even Warren Buffett, who's the best investor in the history of the world, doesn't market time. But if you're that good, that's amazing. But let's assume that's the case. If you're investing regularly, right, it's not one and done, then you're investing, so you invested high. You were right. The market went down, dragged. But you're investing 2 weeks later low. And then you're investing low again. You know, and then maybe you invest high. So you essentially, by forcing yourself to do it, even out the ups and downs, and historically can get a market-like return. Oh no, you say, but I've watched, you know, Kramer on TV, or Jim Cramer, or Mad Money, or whatever the heck it is, and everybody's looking to outperform the market. Well, I know that, but you know, nobody does. You know, something like,
isn't there
nobody. It's something like
Buffett does the $1 million prize or something. What is it that he? Yes. Yeah.
So he's done it, but it's something like the percent of money managers who consistently outperform over a 5-year period is like 0.1%.
I think his contest is I guess it's picking stocks versus a mutual fund. Yeah. And it's $1 million prize, and like his mutual fund is like outperforming. Yeah.
And for a while, there was, in the Wall Street Journal used to have a contest between, I think it was like a monkey and a portfolio manager, you know, or darts. Maybe it was darts. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was throwing darts, and you know, did darts win or did the portfolio manager win? And pretty much the darts always won. So people are sort of, you know, Wall Street has been built up, and investing is like you want to outperform. No, you don't. Get a market-like return. You know, get that. Shoot for, you know, and we don't propose all equity, so not that whole 9 to 11%. We think a diversified investment portfolio can return 6%, and 6% versus 1% over years is a BFD.
Yeah. How do I mean, okay, so I've got $1,000. I'm going to start because I'm going to take it small. What do I do?
Well, first of all, of course, you come to Ellevest, but let's assume you don't want to do that, or it doesn't exist, or whatever. So here's what you do. The first thing is as you look for an investing firm or an investing person, I think an important question to ask is, are you a fiduciary? A fiduciary is obligated to act in your best interest. A fiduciary is obligated to put your interest ahead of his or her own. Not every investment professional out there is a fiduciary. There are investment professionals who can be terrific, terrific, terrific people who work for broker-dealers. They must choose a suitable investment for you. So if you think about the difference between act in your best interest versus suitable, this one is a higher standard. You want to make sure that the fees are low. Fees, you know, returns are projected, you hope for, there'll be some volatility around it, but fees are an actual cost. And so for us at Ellevest, that means that we invest in ETFs, exchange-traded funds, which tend to be low fee, lower than mutual fund fees, lower than managed account fees, lower than any of these other things you hear of. So look for exchange-traded funds. Our fee at Ellevest, in order to manage the money, put together the portfolios, is 0.5 percentage point. You want to keep whatever that is for your provider below 1%, I would say. So fiduciary, low fee. You want a diversified investment portfolio. I mean, think about it. You know, even though it might seem really appealing to invest in one stock, Facebook, that's a very risky undertaking. Things can happen, antitrust, lawsuits, etc. Mark Zuckerberg could decide to go off and become president of the United States or something. So there is no free lunch in investing. If there were, it would be diversification, which by having more types of investments, broader investments, tends to reduce the risk. Some investments go up and others go down and give a steadier, and historically, the research I've seen, higher return over time. If you are young and if your goals are longer term, you want to have more equities. Why? Because you want to have the more risk that equities imply.
What is an equity?
An equity is a stock. So you think of the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, stocks. They are portions of ownership in a company, okay? And so they tend to be riskier, but tend to have had a higher return. So if you're younger and you can afford to ride some riskiness over time to get the higher return, you want more equities. If you're more mature, you're like, whoa, what if there were bubbles in the market? You want to be more in what's called bonds or fixed income. That's debt of a company. That tends to be more stable. And so talk to your provider, or with a firm like Ellevest, more equities in the early years, more fixed income in the later years. Riskier in the early years, less risky in the later years. And then the final thing I would say is back to what we were talking about before, which is just make it a habit. Make it so that a certain percent of every payment you get, if you're a freelancer, X%, or every paycheck you get goes into future you. So it doesn't, the industry makes it seem so hard. Oh, alpha and beta and standard deviation and, mutual fund and alternative and hedge fund, and, use all these words. It doesn't have to be that hard. And one of our challenges we see with women is that guys will invest through words they don't understand, and women will not. And so here's what I want you all to do. I want you to type into your browser later, not right this moment, Ellevest.com. You can go to, or Ellevest, and call the Go-Getter's Guide to Investing. That's what we're calling it. But
okay. Well, we can actually send this out.
Yeah, we should send it out. Let's send a link. But go there, and it actually talks about those 5 things I just went through. It really is, what are the most important things you need to know before investing? What are some of the terms you need to know? But the idea out of that, we have to, I had one woman, can you believe it, in Silicon Valley last summer, so not a dummy. I mean, not a dummy. It was like, I'm going to take off 2 weeks this summer to figure out investing. I'm like, just shoot me now. Read our Go-Getter's Guide to Investing. It'll take you 15 minutes at most. Our entire Ellevest process takes another 10 or 15 minutes. It just doesn't have to be that hard. But the industry, we all love our jargon, right? I'm sure you love saying the word API. Like, everybody loves their jargon, right?
We try really hard to combat that. But I think something I'm curious. Okay, I'll just tell you how I approach this psychologically, and I'm interested in if you agree with my approach. So I think one of the things that I think makes this so hard is not that investing is so hard, but I think when it comes to money, we're so afraid of losing money.
Yes.
And it's ironic because it's like, because we're willing to lose money all the time, spending it on clothes and whatever, you know what I mean? Nonsense. Yeah. And so I remember sort of saying, and this is also discussions with my husband, where I was like, okay, we're starting to invest. I think it's okay to, we just have to think about it. Like, we're taking this $1,000 and we're just going to use it to learn. And we may lose it all, but that is a $1,000 investment in our knowledge, which will pay back over the long term. And there's no other way to get this knowledge but to try. But I just think it's very hard to, I feel like I had to sort of say to myself, I give you permission to lose this $1,000, and that is still in your benefit.
All right.
You'll go forward.
I embrace that. Let me share another way to think about it. If you are in a diversified investment portfolio, again, not all one stock, you didn't just buy Facebook with it, but you're diversified. You've got your bonds, you've got your stocks, like we do at Ellevest, like great advisors do. If you lose everything, I promise you've got much bigger problems to worry about. You are going to be somewhere in a bomb shelter, right? Because the cataclysmic result that would cause you to lose everything. But see, what you're demonstrating is that we women tend to really focus on that downside. Here's how we've approached it at Ellevest. And it really is actually the best, the most popular thing we do on the site when we were testing it. So when you give us money, you tell us you have a goal. And by the way, the goal may just be to build wealth, but it may be to retire well, and you tell us about your outside assets. We take those into account. It may be to take a trip around the world. It may be to start the business. We calculate for you how much money you'll need to do each of those and the time frame over which you can do them. You can change that around a little bit. You say, I want to buy a house, but you know what, a condo's fine. I'll buy it in 6 years, maybe 8 years. What we then do is we track you to your goal. And we've done an enormous amount of work for this is how we believe your portfolio, how our analysis shows us it will perform. We target to get you to your goal or better in 70% of markets. Why not 100%? That's called savings, not investing. And in even the 71% of markets, you might just be $1 short, but we track to get you there in the majority of markets. So if we do our work right, we think we do, on average, you will come out ahead. What if there's market volatility in between? Well, we build in a lot of down markets, more than the competitors do. What if there's still worse? Well, we show you tracking to your goal, and we tell you if you're off track, right? So if the market cracks, you can look and say, uh-oh, let me see. Either I hear from Ellevest, oh my gosh, I'm off track. What do I need to do to get back on track? Deposit another $200, retire 6 months later, whatever those things are. Or if you don't hear from us and the market's going crazy, you can say, oh, that Ellevest, they built this into, their projections. And so I'm still able to achieve my goals. And so what we've found is putting it in those kind of concrete terms. There's a goal I want to reach. I'm either okay or not, because the market will go up and down. It is much more helpful for us than, oh my gosh, am I okay or not, because the market just cracked.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to take a couple of questions before we're out of time. So the first one I have here is from Julia, and she says, I want to put my money where my mouth is when it comes to my values. How can I start with socially responsible investing? How do you guys approach that?
Yeah, well, so that is something we're working on for next year. It's part of our roadmap. I think it's super important. So I'd love for you to wait for us to do that. If you can't wait for us to do that, you can look at any of the other platforms that are out there. I don't know of digital advisors that are doing it, but you could go to a Schwab, for example, or to a Merrill Lynch, and they will have an array of investments that can help you both invest for returns as well as for your values. I love the concept. I mentioned I'm a partial owner of the Pax Elevate Global Women's Index Fund, which invests in the top-rated companies for advancing women, because that's my value. That's one of my values, and because I actually think it'll yield a positive return because of all the research around that. And those types of mutual funds are available again at a Schwab or a Fidelity or someplace. Okay,
awesome. I have this question from Cameron, which is that in the 2008 recession, I ended up losing my job when the company I worked for closed. When I worked for closed. Thankfully, I had freelancing to fall back on. But what kinds of things can I do to protect myself for the next financial crisis per everything we're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, invest, right?
Yeah, you and me both. I lost my job too.
Yeah.
During the financial.
Me too. Look at that. This is a great club to be in. Yeah.
The big mistake I made, which it doesn't sound like you did, but is worth noting, is that I was given stock in payment, so stock of the company, and I did not sell it. And we had sort of this blood oath where if we had it, we wouldn't sell it. But the shame of it was that in that environment, I was highly exposed to that company. It was my form of employment, and I owned stock in it. And those were if you think about it, those were my two greatest sources of wealth, my future earning stream and the money that I had made there. And so both of those got wiped out. So if you do get options and you do get stock, learn from me. You want to diversify out of those as soon as you can. Even though you might love your company, you feel like it's going to be going gangbusters, you want to, invest in a diversified portfolio. There's also sort of an argument too that if you are, in a very risky industry, you might want to talk to your advisor about potentially having a less risky investment portfolio. Then
interesting, because salary is risky, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. If you're in a new startup, you might want to be less in equities than you otherwise would be.
That's so interesting. And I think this is what you've been saying, but I feel like your point is really that putting all your eggs in your salary basket is a really bad idea.
It's not a great idea. And I've been reorged out of companies, and I tell you, when I was reorged out of running Merrill, my business results had never been better, never been better. And so I thought, oh, I'm fine. Other people might lose their job, not me. And I did. And so you do want to, look, guys, I call investing the best career advice women aren't getting, right? Because if you have more money, you have a lot more options. Now, I've got time for one more because I have a team meeting here that I need to speak into.
Okay, so this last one is, it can be overwhelming needing to save for so many things: house, car, retirement, emergency fund, travel, weddings. How do I balance long-term and short-term savings as a freelancer? Should I save until I get X months in my emergency fund and then move all my savings to other places? I think this is what you were saying about really just have a percentage allocation that you do no matter what.
So I think you got to build that emergency fund first. Because what you don't want to have happen is not have it be investing, have the markets wobble, and you've got less money. So you want to get that emergency fund set first. And then look, one of the things, not to do a commercial for us, but it all becomes about prioritizing. And it's fascinating because sometimes you can't have it all, right? You can't have the car and have the baby and buy the house and retire well and go on a trip around the world, when you're just starting out. And so which thing do you want to do most, and how will each of these, how much will each of these cost you, and what can you get to over time? These are the trade-offs that we work to help women make.
Yeah. Well, Sallie, it's been such a pleasure.
Great. Anything for you, you know that. I'm so happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So everyone, I just want to thank you so much for attending this webinar. I also want to let you know, hold on one second, that we can announce a new winner, and I want to say congrats to Natalie Baker of at O Coding Lady, who won the giveaway for this webinar. I want to remind you that there are 4 more All Access Blueprints left to give away. The All Access Career Blueprint is our coach-guided roadmap to get you from where you are right now to a new tech career where you can be making a bigger salary and then figuring out how to diversify, as we've been talking about with Sallie this whole webinar. So each of these blueprints is worth $14.99, and all you need to do to enter is share your favorite takeaways and quotes from the webinars on social media with the hashtag #BigPayoff. So later this afternoon at 4:30 Eastern, we're going to start our next webinar with Barbara Stanny, and she and I are going to be covering personal finance basics, going, I think, a little bit deeper into these questions of what exactly that 50-30-20 looks like that Sallie is talking about. Really excited for that. Barbara is also an amazing financial guru. I don't know what you would call her, but she's an amazing lady. So I hope to see you there and in the rest of the webinar summit, and keep tweeting your favorite takeaways and quotes using hashtag #BigPayoff, and I will see you later today.